my first home at age 30. And honestly, I wish I hadn't waited so long. And it's not because I couldn't, it was because I didn't know how. And nobody was sharing the truth with me on how to build real wealth. Well, personally, I want to blow the lid off of that because here I stand now, decades later, looking backwards, and I was able to help my 3 kids purchase their first home at age 21. And I've seen now the opportunities that they've had access to that they wouldn't have otherwise. I waited because I didn't know any better. I was raised by an incredibly strong woman who circumstantially was a single mom living on commissions and on food stamps. We moved a lot, and I didn't understand real estate as wealth building. I understood it as stability. It was literally the safety and stability and security of a roof over my head. And that was it. I thought real estate from an owning perspective was for other people. In fact, it was for my landlords, right? That I had to save up enough, get stable enough, get far enough in my profession in order to have the ability and the wherewithal in order to own property. I had to position myself further along before I could get there. I just didn't understand that I had access to real estate from an ownership perspective. That waiting cost me, and it's costing a lot of people because you're probably sitting here thinking,
well, shoot, at age 30, Nicole, people are waiting longer than that today. In fact, that seems young.
In fact, it kind of is because the median first-time homebuyer today is 38 years old. In 2023, it was 35 years old. If I flash back a decade ago, it was 28 years old. So 38, I was 30, maybe I was right in line. But here's the statistics. I lost out on years of appreciation. I lost out on years of tax deductions. For years, I was paying into somebody else's retirement plan, my landlords. I was building their wealth, not mine. I was missing out on the forced savings plan. I was missing out on options. And what I've realized the older I get is I've missed out on the equity build that gives me the options to do something bigger, something even bigger than that one small home. I want to share a story really quickly that highlights the power of equity. So one of my very first rentals, now I'm flashing back 16 years, was a very tiny 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. It was 900 square feet. And at the time, granted, home prices have gone up a lot since then. At the time, it cost me $100,000, which at that time I thought was a lot of money. I sold that property 10 years later for $400,000. And I took that equity and I purchased a commercial building that has done extremely well for me, building up my retirement accounts. Now, in the same manner, I helped my 21-year-olds, all 3 of them, buy their first home. My daughter, my little, now uses that home and the rent that she gets because she's left that home and she's moved to Boston, and she's paying her rent in Boston, her mortgage in Denver, and her car payment in Boston. It's helping her live a better life and move on to that next phase in life. My 2 boys, they were able to access the equity in their homes and they bought a second home. And they're using that income to offset their current environment and save more and experience more and do more and live life like a 25 and 27-year-old should. Without that growth of equity into opportunity, without that opportunity to have rental income and options, we cut ourselves at the knees thinking it's for somebody else. I'm not ready. It's not for me. I'm not stable enough, adult enough, or ready enough to purchase my first home. In fact, 65% of Gen Z and Millennials who were surveyed said that they're waiting and skipping their starter home. I can't blame them. I mean, starter homes are expensive today. That tiny little 2-bedroom, 1-bath that I sold for $400 is probably $525 or $550 today. Starter homes aren't as cheap as they were, but they're never going back to there. Even if we see any recalibration of home values, it is not going to be substantial enough to make a big enough difference to keep you on the sidelines for longer. In fact, if I had to do it over, I would have bought my first home at age 21, not 30. I would have bought a starter home and not what I thought was a family home, because that's what I did. I went out and I waited until we could buy a big enough home that we could raise a family. I would have bought a starter home that could have helped me leapfrog into a family home. I would have learned how down payment assistance worked. I saved up. I mean, I told you I was a professional then. I thought it was for other people. And I was saving and saving and saving until I had enough money in my savings account, until I had 20% down. I didn't understand. I would have used the power of down payment assistance and grants. Do you know how many down payment assistance and grant programs there are available to you? It is mind-blowing. And there are programs that are limited by income, and there are programs that actually have no income limits whatsoever. This is something that you need to dive deep in with somebody who cares enough to spend the time to go through the strategy. I would have known more. I would have stopped waiting for the right time, and I would have known that it was time in the market. That the longer that I stayed in the market, the more that my money worked for me, the more that the power of appreciation, opportunity, and tax deductions all were working in my favor, instead of limiting me to trying to time the market at the very right time. Now, I'm not saying you should jump in when you don't feel stable and ready, but if you feel stable and ready and you're waiting for something else, then we need to talk. I would have used that first home as a stepping stone and not the finish line. So many people right now are trying to buy that perfect home that is perfectly positioned and staged and beautifully done. And I get that because everything costs more, so you want all the work done for you. But if you buy that home that needs a little love and care, how much equity will you be given just through the ability to update that home? How much further along will you be in your wealth development? Look at homes as opportunities for wealth design, not just to provide the roof over your head. And I would have surrounded myself with people that were talking about bigger visions than the ones that we're talking about today, where we're talking about the limitations on the monthly payment or the cash to close, or the fact that home prices might dip, or the fact that interest rates might come down, and I want to wait until that happens. I would have surrounded myself with people that were talking about how can this investment help me leapfrog into bigger investments, bigger opportunities, and bigger wealth. I would have put myself around those people instead of the people that talked about the limitations and how now is not the right time. This matters now, and it matters to you because you don't need 20% down. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need to wait until the market is perfect. You don't even need to wait until you're fully ready. You just need to know what your very next best step is. Because the longer you wait, the more expensive your fear becomes. Home ownership isn't just about owning a home. It's the first brick to building real wealth. And if you are feeling behind right now, know that I see you. I was you. And I want to help you take that very next best step, because it's not just about clearing the noise around us and deciding whether to rent or to own. It's about taking ownership of our future, of our financial future. Honestly, I believe you should be wealthy too. And I believe home ownership is the first step in making that happen. Thanks for hanging out with me.